The cause is unknown and there is no cure. This is a story we've been told for decades. And yet there is so much evidence that is being ignored. There's evidence that there are fungal DNA, there's actually candida and other types of fungi in the central nervous system of MS patients and even in brain cells in MS patients. So this is a really important topic. We're going to talk about how, number one, with multiple sclerosis, we know that the immune system is active, it's fighting something, and we're just told that it's fighting our nerves, but there actually is fungi present in the central nervous system of MS patients. So number one, how does this impact our health? How does this impact our symptoms? Is this part of the cause of multiple sclerosis? If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha. I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. 37 years ago, I was diagnosed with MS. And what's so interesting is what I'm going to be sharing with you today is research information from practitioners, medical doctors 40 years ago. These were some of the pioneers that I first studied when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So again, they have been finding fungi, fungus, specifically candida, and possibly others, but these are the studies I'm going to cover, not just in the blood, not just in our intestines, not just in the central nervous system, but all the way into our brain cells. And that is absolutely crazy. It's just insane that this is not being studied. So this really matters a lot because when we are dealing with multiple sclerosis, we're often feeling a lot sicker than what our MRI is showing. So different symptoms can be caused by multiple sclerosis, and we're going to talk about some of those. So the fungus, I should backtrack. Fungus is a type of parasite. Any parasite that lives, any microbe that lives in your body and causes you harm is a parasite. So fungus is just one type of parasite that is involved in multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. And you may have heard of candida before. Candida is a type of yeast, but there's also molds. We'll talk a little bit more about those also, but sometimes we live in a moldy environment. And fungi, whether it's yeast or whether it's mold, they produce some of the strongest, most deadly toxins that we know of, that humans know of. And so it is a really big deal if, number one, if they're in our body to any degree, but especially if they're in our central nervous system, this can really cause a lot of symptoms. So for example, chronic fungal overgrowth in our central nervous system, but even in our body, can cause this crushing fatigue that we deal with when we have MS. Maybe we feel like our limbs are really heavy. Maybe we have just a hard time. We're too tired to even stand up. And also just if we're trying to exercise, we may find that we just don't have the stamina. Or if we do exercise, we can find that it crashes us. Like we maybe overdo it. It's easy to overdo it, I should say. And so we try to exercise and then we're just flatlined on the couch for a couple of days after. Maybe we have to have naps every day just to keep going, just to function. So that's the terrible fatigue that fungal overgrowth in the body causes. There's also brain fog and cognitive issues. So when we're dealing with fungal overgrowth, and this is present in MS, this is what's been shown for decades. We'll talk about the research in a few minutes, but we can have a hard time concentrating, finding the right words to say. Our short-term memory can be really terrible, and just feeling like we have a foggy head, feeling like we're walking in a fog all day long. We may have some head pressures and headaches, so it could be migraines, but also just pressure headaches, pain behind the eyes, vision can be impacted also from fungi, and pain at the base of the skull of our brain. Also being sensitive to light. So fungal overgrowth in the body can impact our vision because our eyes are in our head. And so that can really impact how our vision is and our brain function. A lot of people that are dealing with chronic disease, including multiple sclerosis, have a lot of cognitive mood changes. So we might have depression where we're feeling really sad and down, and we have to have medication for that, or we go to medication for that. Also having terrible anxiety, and also being really irritable. Those are also, so like the mood changes, the mood swings, all of that can be linked to fungus also. Poor sleep, where we might have a hard time falling asleep. We might wake up through the night often. Again, sleep disruption is part of fungal overgrowth. Not only fungal overgrowth, but it is definitely symptoms of fungal overgrowth. This is something that I experienced when I was newly diagnosed. I couldn't sleep, but I would feel wired. I felt like I was just like hyperactive, felt wired, but I could not sleep no matter how tired I was. There were things that I could do to fix that, but most people don't know. So all of these factors are the symptoms. All of these symptoms are present when we're dealing with fungal overgrowth. And it just depends on the degree of fungus that we have in our body. We can have nerve pain. Fungus can cause nerve pain, balance issues. So maybe we have burning or stabbing nerve pain, tingling or electric sensations. Let me know if you have any of these symptoms. Worsening of balance. So a lot of us have poor balance, coordination problems. So all of these symptoms really impact our quality of life. And they might see some lesions on the MRI, but these symptoms that we're dealing with, they are far worse than the lesions that we see in the MRI. They just don't paint the picture of how much we suffer when we have multiple sclerosis or other chronic diseases, how it impacts how we feel, how we try to communicate, how we live our life. So when I was first diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 37 years ago, by the grace of God, I came across some practitioners, medically trained doctors. 40 years ago, they had written books about how fungus was involved in chronic disease, not just multiple sclerosis, but other chronic diseases also. And so, like when I was diagnosed, I was told there was no cure. They didn't know what causes MS. I'd be completely disabled in time. There was nothing I could do to change the course of my life. I was devastated. And then, again, by the grace of God, I came across some books written by medical doctors. I didn't even have the internet back then. I would go to a health food store, our local health food store. I would get this magazine called the Alive magazine. They would review a book every month. And very often it was written by these pioneer doctors that understood decades ago that different types of infections, and they really did focus a lot on candida, were causing chronic disease, including multiple sclerosis. So I had never heard of candida before. I didn't ever have yeast infections as a woman. I didn't have a lot of fungal symptoms that I knew of. But of course, I didn't know much about integrative health. I just thought I was a healthy person. One minute you're healthy, and the next minute you have this terrible diagnosis of this disease, this mysterious thing that's going to take over your body and make you completely disabled in time. So I found one book by Dr. William Crook that was reviewed in this Alive magazine. I read that book and I'm like, wow, this gives me some hope. I don't know if I can completely recover from MS, but at least there's a ray of hope. Then I found other books over the months. Again, this Alive magazine was wonderful because that was my only way to access this information. So Dr. William Crook wrote a couple of books, and then I came across Dr. Zoltan Rona, who's a Canadian doctor that wrote the Complete Candida Guidebook. There's also Dr. Orion Truss, and he wrote another book on Candida. And also Dr. Anne Baroque, who's a naturopathic physician. Some of you, let me know if you read any of their books. These are like really old books. I wouldn't buy them right now. You can probably find some of them in libraries. There was one other, Dr. Luc de Schepper. He also wrote a book called Candida. So as I was reading all these books by all these different practitioners, most of them medical doctors, that were talking about infections causing multiple sclerosis, in particular candida, which is the type of yeast, which is a type of fungus, it blew me away because my doctors didn't know anything about this. They didn't talk about it. So back then, 37 years ago, I decided to take a different path. I decided to treat these infections. I didn't know how. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have practitioners to help me, but I decided to go on this journey and to do a lot of research. And since that time, I have done a ton of studying. I actually went back to school to become, I got my science degree. I became a certified teacher. Now we have served thousands of people all over the world, helping them to treat parasites. So this talk is part 3 in a series of the cause of multiple sclerosis. And we're going to talk about other parasites that cause MS, but it's really neat to go back to this because this is where I started. This was the first type of parasite I learned about that's really common in multiple sclerosis. And you can see by the symptoms I shared with you that a lot of us have those symptoms. So it is something we definitely need to treat if we're dealing with fungal overgrowth in the body, because it's part of what's making us sick. It's part of what's causing the disease in us. Make sure to type your questions in the Q&A box. If I have a few minutes at the end, I will answer a couple of questions. And our team will answer them also. So all of these pioneers, like these medically trained doctors and one naturopath that I'm aware of, there are others, but these are kind of like the leaders that I'm sharing with you. And today we have so many more tools to help us to figure out. We have the internet, we have all of these studies that are published, and I share a lot of research on all of this. But it's crazy that if you go onto our website, livediseasefree.com, you will see in the main menu, it says research. And when you click on research, then there is a drop-down menu and you can look at MS and fungus. And there you can actually get direct links to a lot of these studies. So between 2008 and 2018, there were several studies that started to look at people that had multiple sclerosis and looking for evidence of fungi in different places. So they found that with multiple sclerosis, they had a higher incidence of candida infections, and not just typical candida infections, but in the blood. They also, a 2008 study, detected fungal DNA in the blood in 6 out of 7 MS patients, along with fungal antigens. So that would just be like components of fungus and the fungal cell wall component. So just remnants of fungus in the blood of the vast majority of MS patients they looked at. Also finding candida in the spinal fluid. And this was a 2013 study. They detected fungal antigens and fungal DNA in the cerebrospinal fluid of some MS patients. And this is huge because if there is fungus in the central nervous system, and we know that, I'll talk about like the toxins that fungus produces and how they make us sick. We talked about the symptoms they cause, which are a lot of MS symptoms. It's absolutely wild that why are they not studying this? Good question. If they know that fungus, if studies have shown fungus is present in the central nervous system, even in the brain cells, even in the nucleus of the brain cells, why is this not being studied? Brain tissue. So there's a 2018 study published in Neurobiology of Disease, and this is a very strong evidence. The researchers examined brain tissue of MS patients and they found fungal DNA, they found fungal structures visible in brain tissue, multiple fungal species. So that means that Candida has a lot of cousins. So they found different cousins of Candida present in MS brains. And these organisms, so this fungus was not present in control brains. So people that did not have MS, they did not find all of this fungus in their brains, but just in the MS brain. So that is really important. So this means that fungal material was found inside the same tissue where MS lesions occur. Why is this not being studied? So important. We know in science that the central nervous system is not a sterile environment. This is well known in science, that there are different microbes that do get into the central nervous system, whether they get through sometimes there's a leaky blood-brain barrier. That's usually where they're coming through. There's supposed to be this very strong blood-brain barrier that keeps pathogens, parasites out of our brain. But I've talked about different reasons why the blood-brain barrier becomes compromised, and then different parasites like fungus will move into the central nervous system. So the immune response to candida, there are studies that show that the immune system of people with MS reacts strongly to candida. Again, candida is a type of yeast, which is a type of fungus. There's a case-controlled study of 80 MS patients, and they found significantly higher antibodies to several candida species compared to healthy people. So the study found that in the people with MS, they had higher candida enzyme activity. And so there's a certain enzyme in candida, and they found that that enzyme activity was higher in MS, and it was linked to a worsening of MS disability. So higher enzymes from candida in people that were diagnosed with MS and were really having or suffering with more severe disability. Also, some candida strains from the MS, or the candida strains that were found in MS patients, they were showing higher virulence genes. So there are some strains of candida that are going to be more disease causing, and they found this type of candida in MS patients. So in simple terms, not only do some people with MS show high signs of candida exposure, that it's in their blood, it's in their spinal fluid, it's in their brain tissue, but also the candida strains, the cousins of candida, they can be more invasive and they can be more aggressive, and they're causing more severe disease in people that are diagnosed with MS. So fungi can damage the central nervous system by just invading it and causing damage to tissue, and then the immune system is going to have to work to try to get rid of it. It is a foreign invader. I wonder if that's why the immune system, this is one of the types of parasites that the immune system is going after. So we know, and in my masterclass training, I talk about the different forms of candida. If it's non-virulent, it's not a disease-causing form, it's like a round cell. But in time, when the growing conditions are perfect, then it starts to grow roots, which we call hypha, and they kind of dig through tissue. They're a lot harder to treat, and they are a big part of this tissue damage that we can see in our body, but also in our central nervous system. They produce enzymes that are like little Pac-Men, and they definitely will harm our immune cells. They kind of digest our immune cells. Also they can definitely impact structures in our central nervous system, cell membranes and different proteins. They're breaking them down. They produce biofilms that they hide under, which makes it harder for us to treat them. They activate the immune system. There are different chemicals that they produce that will really cause this pro-inflammatory state in our body when we're dealing with MS. Many of the same pathways of inflammation that we do see in multiple sclerosis. They produce a lot of toxins. They produce acetaldehyde, which is the hangover chemical. It makes us feel like we were hit by a truck. Also organic acids. They produce a lot of acids, making us more acidic. They produce a lot of ethanol, which is alcohol, which can cause us to feel like we're drunk, and they call it autobrewery. Organic acids making us very acidic. Ammonia as another toxin byproduct, and just the pro-inflammatory fungal components, the DNA, the fragments of fungus that our immune system is trying to get rid of. Our immune system is our natural defense, and it protects us from enemies, from invaders, and fungus would be an invader. So when we're dealing with inflammation, that means that our immune system is fighting an invader. And it could be fungus, it could be other parasites. We'll talk about those also, but fungus is really linked with multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. So many, many substances. I think there's at least 70 or more different types of toxins that candida can produce inside of our body. So if we have a lot of it in our body, then we can have a very high level of toxicity in our body. And that is really going to affect us in many different ways. There is this gut-brain axis connection that I've talked about. So sometimes some of the fungus can be in our gut and it can cause inflammation to nerves in our gut. And that can be affecting the nerve highway that goes to our brain. And so studies have shown that people that are dealing with MS, they often have altered gut microbes. We've talked about that in many talks that I've done. And so we can have higher levels of candida even in our digestive tract, in our intestines, and that can really cause a leaky gut. And then that causes the different fungi to move into the central nervous system by going first through the blood and then breaking through the central nervous system when we have a leaky blood-brain barrier by some of their toxins and toxins that are produced by other parasites that get out of control with multiple sclerosis. So this immune activation spreads systemically. The inflammation spreads systemically, and that is part of the whole disease process of multiple sclerosis. So we have gut fungal imbalance, and we get immune activation, and we get brain, and this can cause brain inflammation. So some of our students have focused more on treating candida, fungi in the gut and other parasites, and they still might have lesions, but they can become symptom-free. If they continue to treat the various types of parasites, then sure, they can heal the lesions too. We've seen that often, but that just shows you that a lot happens in the gut. When we have this dysbiosis, we're out of balance, and we have a lot of fungus and other parasites, that is going to cause systemic inflammation, which is going to impact our brain also. Another huge thing is that fungus has been linked to cancer and other parasites too, but also cancer. There are studies that very often some of the cancers may be caused by fungus. And we see that with MS, people that are diagnosed with MS have higher risks of different types of cancer. For example, bladder cancer in multiple sclerosis, they're seeing a 70% higher risk of cancer. Brain cancers, about a 60 to 70% higher risk of cancers in multiple sclerosis. Cervical cancer, 20 to 25% higher risk of cancer in MS, cervical cancer in multiple sclerosis. There are others also. These are some of the more common ones that they see in multiple sclerosis, and this is part of what our students have experienced too. Some of my students come, they don't just have MS, but they can have other diseases, including they've had cancer or they still are working on treating cancer. So the fungus will produce a lot of the MS symptoms, I believe is a big player in multiple sclerosis. The studies show this, just the nature of candida show this, and we can't forget that moldy environments can also cause us. So it's not just the yeast candida, but it can be different types of yeast and mold. So molds are another type of fungi, and if we live in a moldy home, the molds again produce such strong mycotoxins that can impact us in all these ways we talked about, and they are deadly. They are really deadly. So that's why we have to treat fungal overgrowth when we are recovering from MS and other chronic diseases. So it is bad enough to have MS, but if we know that with MS that fungus is one of the players that cause MS, one of the types of parasitic infections that cause MS, it also makes us more susceptible to cancer and I'm sure other conditions. So it is really important to learn the basics about fungus. I'm doing a very light overview. I'll be creating my blog post And if you would like to have like a one-page PDF cheat sheet on all of this, make sure to comment fungus, and my team tomorrow will send that off to you. So just fungus, will send it to you with a message, or you can message me on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, also on Rumble, just the word fungus, and I will give you a one-page PDF of different studies that you can go and look at yourself, and just like how, like the symptoms that fungus causes in us. So you can really go like, oh my gosh, I have so many of those symptoms, and I have had these different fungus like symptoms before, and the symptoms they cause, and this is something I need to take seriously. It's one of the infections we treat in the Live Disease-Free plan when we are recovering from MS and other chronic diseases. So this is not the only infection. This is not the only type of parasitic infection we're dealing with, but it is, again, 40 years of understanding this. And there is not a lot of current studies looking at candida in multiple sclerosis. Now they're looking more at the microbiome, and they're looking more at bacteria. They're not making a lot of headway with that, unfortunately. They're missing, in future talks, I'll be talking about some of the large roundworms that we see. So for example, there's the large roundworms that are about 2.5 feet long, anywhere between 6 inches up to 2.5 feet long. Our students are passing. They're also passing flukes, which are flatworms. They're shorter and wider. They are so pro-inflammatory. They're also passing tapeworms. So when we have a burden of these big worms, and they're putting their waste inside of us, and they're releasing their own other parasites inside, like bacteria that die, fungus loves to grow in that environment. So number one, all the parasites, they're working together to suppress our immune system, so our immune system is not dealing with the fungus or the other parasites. And the fungus loves to live in an environment where there's a lot of garbage. It is a recycler of the world. So we have to get, if we would like to recover, we have to use a holistic approach. We have to treat these parasites big to small, but fungus is one of the parasites that has been recognized for decades and linked to MS, cancer, and all chronic disease. It is something that must be addressed to recover. All of these things, number one, take a lot of pressure off your immune system, which is really important. I'm going to go to your questions. Let me know if you have ever heard of this connection between MS and fungus. You probably have. Let me know if you have read any of these books by Dr. Orion Truss, by Dr. Luc DeShepper, by Dr. Rona, by Dr. Anne Baroque, and also Dr. William Crook. Have you read any of these books? Maybe if you were diagnosed years ago, you would have, like myself, 37 years ago. These are classic books. I still have them in my library, but we have a lot more better current information out right now. You're so very welcome. I'm glad that you're finding this helpful. Should I stop chlorella as I feel drunk when I take it? If there's anything that makes you feel bad, you should not take it. Listen to your body. Most people tolerate chlorella really well, but if you don't tolerate it right now, don't take it. Listen to your body. My volume is really low. It shouldn't be low. I hope it is not low. It's mine. I've got it as high as possible here. All right. So just make sure that you type your questions in the Q&A box and our team will answer them. I've got to run here, but I just want to thank you so much for spending this time with me. I am honored to share this information. I really hope that it makes a big difference for you. I don't want to leave you hanging. I don't want you just to go, oh my gosh, I've got fungus. What do I do now? You can go onto our website, livediseasefree.com. Under research, you will see the Live Disease-Free Diet Guidelines. You can start to change your diet. Fungus loves sugar and carbohydrates. So when you decrease your sugar and carbohydrates, you will start to feel a lot better. So work on the diet, getting the carbs down, then also making sure you're having daily bowel movements, making sure you support that. Also working on the sleep. Those three things can make a huge difference in how you feel. You definitely want to treat these parasites, but starting off with a diet is really the foundation of how our live disease-free wellness champions are recovering from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. If you want to learn more about this live disease-free approach, make sure to watch my masterclass training, and that you will find a link to it beside or above or below this video. And that tells you about all like fungus, but also the other parasites, also the steps we take to recover. You'll see amazing case studies of many people that have recovered. And if you really enjoy what I'm sharing with you, if you find it helpful, if it's giving you hope, please help me to get the word out. So share this video, like it, and subscribe, because that is how we get the truth out. So with that, I will be back next week. Take care. Bye-bye.